Now, if you are a CIMA qualified financial controller or financial manager, you probably know this exact feeling. You spent years mastering your craft, you know the numbers inside out, and you run a tight month-end close. But when it then comes to stepping up to that top job, becoming the CFO or finance director, you keep hitting a ceiling. Well, here is the hard truth. Technical excellence alone isn't enough to get you there. The skills that made you a brilliant manager are not the same skills that actually make a great strategic leader. And so today we're going to talk about how to actually break through that ceiling, how to transition from being a financial scorekeeper to a strategic leader, and how to build the ultimate roadmap for your career progression. So let's start by looking at how the profession has evolved. For years, the stereotype of the accountant was all about compliance, producing figures, ticking boxes, and keeping everything in line. We were essentially the scorekeepers. And when you are an FC, your comfort zone is granular data. You focus on variances, reconciliations, and making sure the balance sheet perfectly balances. But as you try to then step up, that granular focus actually becomes a trap. CEOs and board members expect the numbers to be right. That's a given. What they're actually looking for is someone who can interpret those numbers. The best accountants don't just record what happened, they actually help shape what happens next. And so they want someone who can step back from the data entry and tell them, here is what this means for our corporate strategy, and here is what we need to do about it. So how do senior management accountants actually evaluate corporate strategy? Well, it starts by moving your gaze away from the past and focusing squarely on the future. A modern CFO is constantly scanning the horizon. They evaluate business models, assess market trends, and most importantly, manage complex financial risks. And so you need to become the person who spots the risk before it becomes a crisis, whether that's navigating supply chain vulnerabilities, foreign exchange exposure, or the rapidly growing threat of cyber attacks and AI data leaks. Your job is to safeguard the company's future. So essentially, you aren't just reporting on the weather anymore, you are actually building the shelter. Then there are the big defining moves. If you want to sit at the top table, you have to know how to drive growth, and often that means mergers and acquisitions. And approaching M&A is a completely different ballgame from day-to-day accounting. You need to confidently navigate investment appraisals and high-level business valuations. You have to look at a potential acquisition target and see beyond the current P&L. Where are the synergies? What is the true cost of capital? Is this a strategic fit or just a distraction? And when you can bring that level of insight to the CEO, you stop being viewed as just the head of the finance department and you start being viewed as a genuine, valuable business partner. But none of this matters if you cannot communicate it properly. And so the biggest pivot that you likely have to make is in your communication style. When you present to the CEO or the board, they don't want to hear about the mechanics of how you calculated the numbers. They don't want a 40-page deck filled with accounting jargon. You have to translate complex financial data into a clear, compelling commercial narrative. And so you need to move away from just explaining what the numbers are to actually explaining why they matter and how the business should react. It's about boiling down complex business valuations and investment appraisals into clear, actionable advice. Now, making this transition from a basic scorekeeper to a strategic leader isn't something that just happens overnight, and it isn't something that you just learn by doing your month-end faster either. You have to actually actively build these skills. And that is exactly why we have designed the Astranti CPD Subscription. It's the ultimate roadmap for ambitious finance professionals. We have career-redefining toolkits that cover everything from advanced corporate strategy and M&A to leadership communication and risk management. And so if you're ready to break through that career ceiling and step up to a strategic role, click the link in the description below to explore our Astranti CPD subscription today.